What's up, everyone? It's Terry here. We're at Adrenaline Performance in Montreal with a very special guest, Rory Macdonald. Rory, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. We have Stephanie and Joanne, and today we're going to get into some really cool things. I did want to start off the podcast with how we first met. I came up to Montreal maybe like 8-10 years ago, and you don't know this, but I was going up and I was, doing some footage with John and stuff like that. And I'm like, GSP obviously we had him on the cover. Yeah. And I walked around and I go, John, who is the next GSP? Who's the guy that's going to take over the UFC and all that?
10 years ago.
And this is like 10 years ago, and literally, and there was this kid, and you were doing, I think, like deadlifts, and you were going at it. And he just literally pointed and he goes, that guy.
Yeah.
And he said it with such conviction. I go, that guy? And I'm not, no offense, man. I'm like, that guy there? I said, really? He goes, yes. He goes, that guy is, he can fight. And I said, all right. So I started doing some videos of watching you. I actually still have this video that you've never seen of your workout. I will get you that video.
In the archives.
Exactly. To watch. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was a fantastic way. I mean, how it's kind of come full circle too, in the sense that, we're still going and we've been watching your career over the years. And obviously, you're a fantastic fighter and all that. And I did want to start off with your motivation, how you got into it, why you got into it in the first place back then.
Yeah, so I started doing martial arts at 14. It was kind of a weird spot in my life. I was going through a lot of hard times as
pre-teen.
Yeah, I was going through some weird times, and I didn't have really anything going on in my life. I was kind of in a dark place, and I stumbled across a mixed martial arts gym.
There was such a thing.
Yeah.
This is 15 years ago.
Yeah.
This is in BC?
This is in a small town as well. So,
and this was new in that.
Well, it's not new.
And MMA as a
MMA was very in the dark ages, so to speak, back then.
Yeah.
There was probably 2 pay-per-views, maybe just one a year.
Yeah.
At the time, people didn't really think of it
as a sport.
Yeah,
the way it
was more underground.
Yeah.
Not so much as it was in the 90s, but anyway, it was not popular.
Yeah.
Anyway, I fell in love with the training, just going there. I loved the environment, and it was just the first positive thing in my life I found in a while. So I was all in. I was addicted, and then I was there as much as I could possibly be.
At 14 years old.
Yeah, and when I was not there mentally, I was there, thinking and imagining moves and techniques and watching videos and things like that.
When did you realize that this can become a career for you?
Once probably after some martial arts tournaments, I was doing really well. I was competing against adults and I was beating them. I was training with the professional fight team there, and I was doing well. I was getting better all the time. I was learning fast, and my coaches were supportive. And
how was your family at that time? I could only imagine your parents. I have children. I couldn't imagine. Okay, my 14, 15-year-old was getting into it. I want to be a fighter. How were your parents with that?
Well, they enjoyed that I had a positive thing in my life,
Yeah.
So they were supportive of it. But when I said I was gonna fight professionally against an adult, they were like, "You're not gonna go into a cage and fight, that's pretty weird." And I didn't look like a fighter, especially back then. I looked like a kid with big puffy hair, and I was a nerd, and just didn't have the fighter look,
And how were your friends around
especially
you?
back then, because it was big guys, tattoos, bald head.
Exactly.
It was a really
You felt like you're a misfit.
It's not like what it is now, where there's a lot of clean-cut guys doing it. It was rugged dudes back then.
Yeah.
So it was
some bad guys.
Big guys.
Bad
the rules
guys
were all
too, right?
different. It was
not that there wasn't clean-cut, but it was the stigma or
you didn't
the
look
norm.
The typical.
The norm back then was
put you in the cage.
It was a very rugged sport back then.
Yeah.
With rugged guys in there. So I didn't fit the picture for my parents until I started winning. Then.
So this is 18, 19.
16 actually.
This is 16.
Yeah, I started fighting at 16.
Professionally.
Yeah.
Against at 16 you can fight against adults.
Yeah.
So now
you
start winning, 16. And you're like, okay, this is a thing for me.
Yeah.
And are you in school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I finished school. I didn't really want to, because when I was there, I was pretty much thinking about like when I could get to the gym.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I was only thinking about like fighting, and so it was pretty much just like I was getting through it. But I did get
Going
through
through
it,
the motions of
so I'm
school.
happy I did. But
Yeah.
you know.
So when did things start to like shift for you in terms of your focus, right? Because to do this professionally, it's like every day, day in and out. Like you're in the gym, you're training, whether it's like, you know, whether you're in a camp or you're getting ready for the next, you got your eye on the next thing. Like when did things start shifting for you? I think I know the answer, but I'm curious to know for you.
It's like back then, you mean?
I mean, in terms of now, or is it, you know, when you had your daughter, or is it when, you know, you started building a family?
Yeah. So yeah, my motivation shift. Yeah. So it was recent. It's been recent actually, because of my relationship with Jesus Christ.
Right.
You know, for my 20s, I was kind of living for my self pleasure and just focused solely on myself, you know, and what I needed to do in the sport. And I had my plans and my way of doing things. So it was all about me.
Was the motivation consistent?
Yeah, like, so I wanted to be the world champ back then, you know, but as my plans were failing and I was like, you know, I was just getting messed up. I was getting pulled away from my focus.
Yeah.
You know, partying and whatever, girls, you know, different temptations that come, you know.
Well, you got some fame at a very young age, which is very hard. And how did you deal with that?
And then losing like some big fights and stuff, like
The roller coaster.
yeah, the ups and downs of the sport kind of pulled me away, and I kind of lost focus. And I started like, I had a lot of turmoil inside of me, a lot of anger, and I didn't have any good outlet for it except, you know, taking it out on other people and just going.
It's like the thing that originally gave you that outlet kind of, you know, came full circle, and it was now that was working against you now in your.
It's kind of a funny way of looking at it, yeah. So yeah, it was a dark period in my mid-20s, and I wasn't living a good life. And by the grace of God, I met Jesus Christ, and I found Jesus Christ, and you know, it's been a journey since then. I mean, it wasn't instant for me.
Yeah.
It was a period of like testing the waters one step at a time, and I mean, still is today. I'm still growing in my relationship with Jesus, but I mean, I could tell you that my life is the best it's ever been, and like, God has blessed me so much, and God is just so good, and He's real, and you can experience Him, and it's just been really amazing to see how God has literally taken me where I was and transformed me, and transformed my situation, and just my joy and peace that I have, hope, and just my lifestyle and everything. So just learning every day, being in the Word every day, like the Bible, and applying it to my life, learning who God is, what He wants us to do with our lives, is just for our good. And as I keep growing in that and being more obedient, it keeps getting better and better. So that's been a big transition for me as a new believer.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because my old motivation was fueled by kind of an anger and a turmoil inside.
But when you say that, like the anger, like there's one thing about MMA fighters, okay, you prepare, you get in, and once you get into that octagon, or once you get into that ring in the cage, you know, the door closes, it's you and him. What goes through your mind right there and there? Or what did go through your mind, and now what do you think is going to go through your mind in the future?
So back then, I just wanted to like decimate people.
Destroy them. So
yeah, and if I was like, you could actually see it in some of my fights. Like I've had chances to finish people, but I like dragged it out
Right,
to
so
like.
this was the last
It was
one,
almost
right?
like self-satisfaction to do it, which is kind of like
A weird.
like looking back, it's like that's a really messed up way of like
So,
doing that.
so is it fair to say that this next fight that you have coming up is like the first fight with your new mindset, because now you've had your time to reflect and make sense of what your purpose is going in. The last one you may not have known that you needed to do that because you had those discoveries like while you were in the fight.
Yes.
So then you've reflected, and now I feel like going into the new one, just based on hearing your interviews and hearing you speak, it's like you now know what your purpose is going in there. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say. I mean, for people who may not be aware, because you probably listen to my interviews,
Right.
but my last fight, I was in my head most of the fight, thinking about why I'm doing this, like as a new person, a new creation, like, and not having that same turmoil that pushed me.
Yeah, and you probably hadn't processed it because it just showed up right there and then.
Exactly. You know, sometimes you didn't prepare for that.
Were you having thoughts while you were in there thinking, like, why am I thinking this? Like, I shouldn't be thinking this right now? Or were you kind of battling yourself?
No, I was actually just
or you
pretty
were in it?
focused
Wow.
on it, because I was fighting a guy that I didn't feel very in danger.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like I was above him, like,
Okay.
and, like, skill-wise,
Yeah.
and like I didn't really feel worried.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could take breaks because I was up on the scorecards, and I was just in my own head.
Right.
So I was doing what I could, but I wasn't fighting like full on. But anyway, the week after, I had a lot of clarity on moving forward as I was in prayer and just reflecting and watching the fight and just rethinking everything. I know now that I can use this platform and the skill God has given me in a positive way to give my testimony to people that might be going through something similar, where maybe they went off of their original focus somewhere along the line, and they found themselves in a really bad spot just because they were like trying to make their own way on themselves, on their own strength. But there is a way back and a better way through Jesus Christ, and I could tell you with complete honesty that it happened for me. I literally tried to make my own way on my own strength. I fell on my face. I made some bad choices, but God turned everything around and changed everything for the better. And I can't imagine where I would be without Him now.
Yeah. What would you say to a young Rory now, if you could look back and talk to yourself? Would there be anything you would say to him now in the future?
Yeah, there would be a lot.
What would you say? Let's give me a couple of things.
First thing is I would start talking about faith and staying the course and getting into the Word. I was born and raised Catholic. Yeah.
Were you religious younger?
I had no real relationship or understanding of
Yeah.
who Jesus Christ was. I knew some stories,
But you weren't really.
I had no relationship, and
Yeah.
that's the key, I think, is is when you have an experience with God and you start to understand who He is and who you are in Him, accepting Him and turning away from a life of sin and being dedicated to being a Christian. It's a huge change. So I don't know where I was.
You were saying, what would you tell a young Rory? So faith, believe in God.
So stay the course with that. Find some good Christian people to surround yourself with, because when you're say you're a Christian and you start mixing up yourself with like people who are living in sin in the world, and you try to blend that into this, you're gonna get pulled away if that's the dominant thing. So surrounding myself with people that in the church, finding a good church where the Holy Spirit is present, and I think that's number one. And acknowledge Jesus in all my ways, to let Him direct my path, is the best advice I could give. And the second is start investing early.
Fair enough. That's something we talked about.
Absolutely,
I mean, that's something we had talked about earlier. Yeah.
We see there's been all the hype about, with this last post-fight interview, there's been all of this hype, and I think it's good because it's giving you a platform and it's creating this conversation. Now, I think most people are asking you in terms of like, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue fighting? And when I first heard this, and I'm going through YouTube and looking at what's going on, I'm looking at this from like as a human, right? So I'm looking at someone who is publicly reinventing themselves, and I think you're someone who has a huge platform, and that's why everyone's looking. But I think we're living in this weird time where the everyday person is on social, or whether it's their Instagram, of their family and friends, and ultimately people care about what their circle thinks and feels about them. So everyone's worried about what will people
Right.
think if I change my view on the world or if I change my way of being. So I think I can relate to that. I know you can relate to
Yes.
that. Like if we're growing up and things are different and you've just gone through this, like what would you say to someone, because you've done it fearlessly, you've really put your
Yeah.
you've grown
You expose
fearlessly
yourself too, right?
and
Sure.
what would you say to someone who is scared of that? Like maybe they want to go to church but they're scared of changing because it's been not who they have portrayed or how they
Or how
see
people
themselves.
perceive them too,
Sure.
right? I mean, that's something else. People could look at you and judge you, obviously.
I would focus on what the word says. When you give yourself to Jesus, you have a comforter. You have someone that's gonna be by your side, and it's a real feeling. It's a real presence, and a strength and a courage that comes upon you to help you through those times. So it's not like you're throwing yourself out there and it's just you know, because if it is that, then you never really came to Jesus fully in the first place. When you really give your heart, you turn away from sin, you ask for forgiveness, you ask Jesus to come into your heart. He's there with you and he's giving you strength and he's supplying what you need in those situations to make you fearless, to rely on his strength and his support.
Your wife was already like, she was going to church like regularly and she was what got you into it more.
Yeah.
And then through that, so if your wife wasn't there, like if she didn't have that encouragement and talking to the younger Rory, like what would you say to someone who was closed to this? And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are closed and interested but closed, right?
Yeah.
So as someone like yourself who has this message now, like going by themselves, maybe they don't have someone else they could ask, right?
I hear that. I mean, I've actually been in those shoes. As a 18-year-old, I was very interested in who God was after doing a fast for health purposes, not for like spiritual reasons. I learned afterwards that fasting can grow your spirit, man. But anyway.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So anyway, after during that fast, I got very interested, to know more about God, and I started trying to read Bibles and try churches and things like that. But I had no guidance because I had no people around me. I didn't really understand what was going on. Denominations of churches.
Right. Yeah.
What Bible to pick, because there's thousands of different translations. Some of the one I had, I couldn't even make sense of it because it was in old English.
Yeah.
So it's like.
What do you think other fighters think of you right now, with what you've just been going through? Do you care what other fighters think about you right now? Would you have any opinion of it?
Well, I've gotten some good supportive messages from other people, from fighters, in the industry, that. Support what I'm doing, or they say that it gives them motivation to do it as well.
Has there been any negativity about it at all, or?
Not from fighters, no.
Not from fighters, but other people.
Social media you get a bit, but it's been overwhelmingly positive on my end.
Do you go into social media often? Is this something where you how do you
see it? Yeah.
Really see it? Is it we're all on social media. I have people, and it used to bother me sometimes. People say something, and I mean sometimes it does. I think we're human.
Yeah.
Does it affect you in any way now, or?
Not as much as it might have when I was, say, 20, when I first got into the UFC. When I would get a negative message, I would be like,
take it to heart.
It would really fire me up. But I guess through that experience of just being attacked on as an athlete, you expose yourself as a fighter. You have weak moments in the cage, and everyone gets to have their opinion on it publicly. It's just that hurts. But once you deal with that, it kind of I don't know. I guess you get numb to it after a while.
Yeah. Do you feel a lot more free today than you did a year ago, 2 years ago? Because a lot of people feel stuck, right? A lot of people, they're living this Instagram life, or they're working a job, or whatever it is they're doing, they're trying to get healthy, and they feel out of integrity with whether it's not taking care of their body, or not doing something they love, or not being fueled by passion.
Sure.
So now you're
stuck in a routine.
Right? And it's how does that show up for you on a day-to-day in your relationships, and how you're living your life, and how you're walking around with a pep in your step? How is it freeing for you?
the best advice I could give is take 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you feel comfortable with in the morning. Open up your Bible, read a chapter or a little bit. Like take 5 minutes, read it. Read get a study Bible and read the commentary on it. Meditate on it. Try to make sense of it in your mind. Think about it. Pray about it, and see how your day goes after that. Because I'm telling you, it sets the tone for the day.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And then obviously just getting out of your comfort zone with things. Eating better. Maybe training, taking that step of training a little more. If you're on the couch all the time, go for a walk, or get outside and just get out of your comfort zone a bit.
I'm curious about something. If you were not a professional fighter, what would you have done? If it didn't work for you being a fighter, what would you have wanted to do?
Back when I was younger?
Yeah, what did you want to do? Was there something?
There was nothing else I wanted to do.
So you were like, I'm going to be a fighter, I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah, that was I had one plan. That was it. Yeah.
Okay, so now in the future, what would be something you would do after fighting? What would something you'd want to do?
Yeah, well, so I want to do something that gives glory to God. I want to serve Jesus all my life, and I don't know exactly what that door is right now.
Yeah.
It's something that's on my mind a lot, and one of the things that was on my mind during that last fight, is this the end of this road? Am I supposed to? But I have clarity now that when the time comes, God's going to open that door and make it very clear that this chapter is ending, and He's going to make a way for me in another sort of way and use my strengths. As long as I stay faithful and focused on doing the will of God in my life.
I did want to ask just a couple of questions about training right now. You have a fight coming up in, I guess it's like 3 weeks? 3 weeks?
Sorry?
You have a fight coming up in 3 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks, yeah.
What are you doing now differently than you've done before in other fights, training-wise? Is there anything you're doing differently?
No, I'm pretty much keeping the same schedule as my last fight there. They were pretty close back to back. I think it was like almost 6 weeks or something, or 7 weeks between. So I rested a little bit, and now I'm just right back into training camp. And
Now, what kind of your diet? Like, what kind of? I always ask people, what did you eat today, or what's like a typical day of food? I always people want to know what I eat. What do you eat? Like, you get up, what do you eat?
Today I had grapefruit and oranges, and I had oatmeal with banana, chia seeds, and sliced almonds. Yeah.
You can remember that quicker.
That's
than
pretty
most
good.
People
Yeah.
can. Most people are like, what did I eat today?
So you eat. So then you said you do fasting as well. So
yeah, I'm trying to get better at it. I mean, it's been with training for a fight, it's been tough, but I plan on doing one this summer for sure.
Excellent. What's your favorite cheat food? If you're gonna go out and eat something,
I love pizza and pasta.
Where's the best pizza in Montreal? We're curious.
Oh, that's tough. That is a tough question. I don't know. It's hard to say.
You think it all, right?
Little Italy has a lot of good places.
And we know you're cut for time. I think it's so cool how you are speaking your truth and doing. And I think it takes so much. I think the fight of our lives is to be happy and to live in our truth, and you have a platform and you're using it. I think it's really inspiring for other fighters coming up to talk about what they're passionate about and being in their truth and do it openly and receive positive feedback. And I think it's super cool. So I'm grateful that you're doing that, and I think your message is incredible.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for spending the time. We really appreciate it. We wish you obviously the best of luck in the future.
Awesome, good.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.